Yeah, well,
I don't want to put the retard on. Make a noise.
just kind of delay the inevitable.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems it's really insane to me. This concept kind of really got sunk in the past couple weeks, basically. But the fact that you actually have an output and that you can control, like, what your body looks like, actually control what your body looks like if you, like, go to the gym. It seems super simple, right? But the fact that, like, daily
But nonetheless,
actions...
some pieces of shit like you don't do it, Ben.
No, it's like, well, like you work in a business and it like takes forever to get off the ground, and then when it finally does, you're like, holy shit, this is actually working. It's like, what the fuck?
Right.
I don't know. It's a very simple concept, but people just don't really understand it. They don't live on a daily basis knowing that.
That you can actually affect your future.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Positive
true.
and negative, right? Because a lot of people think that, oh, I'm just going out drinking on a Friday night. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yes, on its own.
Yeah.
But when you go out drinking 3 times a week, you turn into an alcoholic very fast.
Yeah.
Is this the good chord?
Yeah, that's the good chord. Yeah.
Alright, so all the chords are good.
All the chords are good, as far as I know. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
The last chord was visibly damaged.
Yeah, I know. What were you gonna say, Lane?
So.
Yeah, your actions compound themselves.
Yeah, well, for sure. But I also have to wonder if we're not discussing something that's kind of like, sort of a mindset of like the college age group.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like more than just applicable to everybody.
Oh, I talked about this with my dad, because he still doesn't really understand it.
No, boomers never grew past that, and it was
No.
cool because they caught the wave of a great economy.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just like piss by and still have a 401k.
And
And then-
house.
Yeah, and then
On
we
the
got
beach.
born into trash economies, and we have to grind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's unfair, but
responsibility is the antidote to meaninglessness.
Mm-hmm. But also the boomers were some of the happiest generations.
Yeah, I would.
So,
too.
I mean,
No phones and fucking low taxes.
yeah, and low cost of buying.
Good cars.
Good cars.
Yeah, really good cars. Boomers. Yeah, it's easy to be a boomer. Good music.
Good music too, and I mean, more government corruption, more public government corruption in the United States. Watergate, Nam.
I mean,
There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, but in terms of public
Dude,
and
we have
well-known corruption, the
we have
70s, the late
Weekend at
70s.
Bernie's is
I
running
gotta
the country
I
right
gotta
now.
hold up now because.
Weekend at Bernie's is running the country right now.
Yeah.
That's what you call it. Public corruption.
But
That's just in the.
But also, I gotta
right in
point
your
out.
face.
I gotta point out. We've seen the most like wage stagnation for like compared to GDP growth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Right in American history.
Yeah, 15
in
bucks
American,
an hour
in American
doesn't mean
history.
anything.
And you could say this is like it's probably the period in American history with the least amount of social mobility due to the like collapsing middle class.
Yeah.
I think that's a true statement. I can't think of another period in American history that competes with it.
1860s America.
Oh,
when you
Gilded Age?
couldn't, yeah, like when you couldn't like
I
actually
guess
go
you-
into a city
You
and
got
get a
us.
job.
The Gilded Age
but,
is
like,
worse.
The time after, right immediately after the only civil war we've ever had.
Yeah.
That's what we're competing with here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
And
like,
that and the Great Depression. Yeah, we're in the rough spot.
I mean, like post 1950, this is easily the hardest time to get out of the lower class in
Ever.
American history.
Yeah. That's
Easily.
fucked.
Which is fucked because the United States has more power now.
And we all just turned 19.
Yeah.
Well, that's not such a surprising statement to an extent.
Yeah.
Like, it obviously shows mismanagement, but at the same time, when you say post-1950s, what I hear with that is post-war period. You know what I mean? It's like post-war period, if you're America and you're not in the war, you're not in the, like, you're outside of the war.
Yeah.
We saw, like, a huge spike in our economy immediately after World War I.
Yep.
So we're kind of, like, the brackets we're choosing are a bracket where that's kind of unfair because 50s through 80s.
That is true. That is true because
is
we were competing against disabled countries.
And the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So we were competing on a free.
Yeah, we were just
comparing
crushing.
GDP growth
But
to
then
a country
again-
that
Yeah.
doesn't.
Now we're competing against China.
China and
So
Yeah.
like
Russia's
it's
good
not
now.
Russia's not close.
No, yeah, we're
But
not competing
Russia's-
with anybody.
We're competing-
now, really.
I mean,
I guess so. Well,
we're
China's pretty
competing
strong.
we're competing with China.
Yeah, we've got threats. We got threats that
Yeah.
we're competing with, but we don't have equal players.
Yeah,
You know what I
China's an equal
China's
player.
pretty close.
China's in terms
The
of
thing is,
GDP.
it's
China
so
would be an
bizarre.
equal player, if you
Dude,
ask me.
I don't
China
know.
isn't an act. The United States has never had an equal player. It literally has never in its existence,
I don't know.
aside from Revolutionary War and War of 1812, had an equal player besides itself.
I mean, I
Isn't
gotta
that
say
weird
no.
how intertwined our economy is with China? Like, it's
Yeah.
really hard to tell who's stronger because we're both way codependent on each other.
Yeah, and it's really funny because both of us are trying to take down each other with
It's so
tariffs
fucked, and we're just
with tariffs and
completely
censorship.
codependent on each
Yep.
other at this point.
Yeah,
Because we invent the stuff and they make it for cheap over and over.
yeah,
Like, it's
Yeah.
just stupid.
and we're just as they're gaining more dominance in terms of stateside like development and corruption and stuff like that, but we're also gaining more dominance in terms of the fact that other countries are now industrializing and able to make their goods for
Yeah,
cheaper than China
A
can
lot
make
of
them.
the world has been going west
Yeah,
since
China
we
and-
existed, which is big time.
China's kind of running into, like, they could very well run into, like, a middle income issue.
Oh, it's happening.
Oh, yeah, dude.
It
I'm
is
cautious
happening.
about my statements. Or maybe I'm just a couple years behind, but the middle income issue with China is definitely something.
What's that?
It's like, so it's where your population gets rich enough that you can't just enslave them to make cell phones for us.
Yep.
But they're not rich enough to make the cell phones.
So
So this
Oh.
This is-
that's, it leads
Is
to
that
creative
happening to
economic
them, you think?
stagnation.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no Chinese stock market. Okay?
Right.
There's no
That's
Chinese
rough.
cryptocurrency. There's no Chinese big tech companies to
There's
go
also-
work for in Silicon Valley. Okay.
They've also
The on-
never
they're
writ-
only-
they've never written one good song.
Well, we don't speak their language.
I don't whatever. That's a fact.
But the interesting thing is that the only investment that the middle class has and the lower class has is real estate. Okay. Real estate has never ever in China's history gone down since the reign of Mao Zedong. Okay. Not once has it gone down. It just now went down 40% in a year. Just now. So it's really interesting that you
their
say that.
population's like tanking. That's why, you know. If I just had to throw out a reason, I would say their population's decreasing very, very heavily and has been
It's-
for a couple of decades.
It's
And
the fact that the government's controlling everything, and their biggest lender just went bankrupt. Evergrande. I don't know if you heard about
Oh
that.
yeah, and the Chinese real estate, the government's been just artificially propping up for a while now, haven't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
You
it
guys know
just
about Beijing?
yeah.
Dude, they
can't-
literally we
Yeah.
can't
You can't talk about Beijing.
It is a
Those bleeps
conspiracy
over
to
it.
say
It's not. It's real.
Some
no,
of
no,
it
no, no,
might
shut up. It is a
come to
conspiracy.
think-
It's a yeah. Some might come to think, due to misinformation, that they locked down an entire city and started just mass slaughtering people and dogs. That would be misinformation to say that, which is bananas. That is definitely not happening.
I mean,
Like, what the fuck's going on in this world?
hey, we love you, CCP, Chinese Communist Party. We love you we love you. Please buy our products that we decide to make and don't kill us. But yeah, the don't Mike, really close.
Yeah.
Look, it's China.
Some might. Man, I feel
Yeah, I'll
like
put
I
it
could have
down.
made a joke there, but I just couldn't think of anything.
Yeah.
You know? It's a
The-
bummer. I just drew the whole thing to a stop right there. I did.
It's the thing is, there. Not only is it happening, there's no way for like a Chinese citizen to make money while not agreeing with the CCP. First off, even if they
social
move to,
credit's a really scary thing.
it's not. It hasn't been implemented yet.
What,
But
in
it-
China?
no.
Yeah, it is. What do you mean?
On a small scale, it has, but
yeah, it's just
large
on the cities on the coast and stuff.
where all the business is.
Yeah.
But the it's a tester program basically, and it isn't really into effect yet. How it will be, but
Dude,
in like
it's-
25,
It's really rough.
I know.
Hey, you know what might help with that? If they're implementing it in the important coastal cities, like Okay, so China's always had important coastal cities, but at the same time, they've always been a very like land trade oriented society, and a lot of their military actions suggest that they want to return to that concept of having over trade over land.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do that, they might kind of screw themselves because they might give a lot more power to the more rural, less communist part.
Yeah, the farmers.
Parts of China.
The Indian part of China and the
or like you could say the Tibetans, but you could also say like more like the Mongolic part of China or whatever else, and they're like the Communist Party. I don't think reaches out that far. It doesn't have that same strength as it has in the cities.
Not the same strength.
Yeah,
but
that's important. I know they still
very
have the strength
similar
to take down.
strength.
Yeah.
Any revolution that happens, they have the support of all of the cities in the entire country on lock. Due to propaganda, and threat of death of any government or public official, of any public or private company that's big, threat of death of family, or just like shutting down and like making sure that the business doesn't do well. I mean, you saw what happened to Alibaba, right? China's biggest company by far. Their leader went missing for 3 months. The CEO of Alibaba, Jack Ma, went missing for 3 months because he said one bad thing to an American publication.
He went missing?
For 3 months.
Christ.
The owner of a publicly traded American or Chinese company and the single biggest company in all of China went missing for 3 months.
Just because he said something bad about the government?
I will say historically, those kind of societies have never survived.
Yeah,
But I will say
they're slowly dying. China is slowly dying.
I know there's a lot of reasons that those slowly die, but I will say it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of mentality plays out with the capacity to have cameras everywhere, which is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't legal to criticize the King of France either.
And they lived. Is that what you're saying, or what?
Yeah, the Jacobins managed to meet.
Isn't that crazy, man? Like, how much we take for granted. We have, like, actually the right to criticize our leaders and stuff.
Yeah.
That's, like, such a rarity in history.
Yeah.
And in today's society.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to criticize India's leadership.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia's leadership.
That's so fucking bananas.
It's still a Western thing, I guess.
It's literally... Well, I mean, the West has always been farther along technologically than the East since
freedom has always been, and the West has always been the most generally oriented towards freedom, for a very, very long time.
Since the creation of the actual West.
Yeah, because and if I had to place that on something, I would say it was because when the first civilizations were taking root, mainly in the Middle East and China, the West was still a barbarian place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I usually pin the West's desire to be free, which is very, very old, or have autonomy or something similar to that, as generally sort of being the result of having been barbarians when civilizations existed, and thus developing cultural values in opposition to those existing civilizations.
Yeah. Speaking of culture, it's really tragic to see the fall of American culture.
Western culture, yeah. This is what we were talking about.
Western culture still exists, not nearly to the level of Eastern culture, but American culture specifically, even among Western countries, there was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s a very distinct American culture.
Mm-hmm.
Very distinct, very patriotic, very hating the government and loving the fact that we're a people that isn't controlled by the government all at the same time. Very American.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No, I know. I would say it also doesn't exist in any of the European countries.
It doesn't exist in Canada. It doesn't exist in Australia. It doesn't exist in the UK.
Yeah.
You also... Okay, for one thing, when we make observations like that, there is a caution about saying a culture
Look, when we went
doesn't
to that
exist
4th of
versus...
July thing...
Huh?
I wanted to start a USA chant, but people will think you're somehow like a right-wing fucking nut.
Yep.
You just like wave an American flag. Like, what's going on?
I mean,
I don't know. I see Dad's channel doing that all day. It's like, you know, it's that kind of it's symbolic. It doesn't make it that it's not a real thing, but now I want to say a couple of things about that. The first thing is I don't want to mistake cultural traits for absence of a culture. I don't want to mistake absence of cultural traits for absence of a culture. So if we say American culture doesn't exist due to the absence of particular American traits like hatred of government, then we could be mistaking like what might just be like sort of a shift in the culture towards a different side of the culture for an erasure of the culture.
yeah.
And that's that's not a mistake that I think we want to make. And so I want to point that out because that's because people do that. Like, people sometimes will just say our culture is being destroyed because people don't do this anymore, but sometimes people don't do things anymore within a culture. That happens, you know. Like, that's just a part of how cultures evolve.
I think what's more important is what we talked about yesterday. That
I'm about to get that now, so let me just
Alright.
keep going here. The second thing is, like, we can note that, like, American culture is fading, but something I don't think we as Americans are often aware of is just how much European culture has faded.
yeah,
Because we can say Western culture is still there, but European culture is not as European culture was. European culture was quite a thing a century ago.
I
And
mean,
a century ago. That's the catch. It's been longer since we've really had that very strong European culture because their culture really they got hit hard by World War I over there, you know.
yeah. The West stopped having faith in itself after the World Wars, and we lost our values because it's how could we trust in our values? We just killed half of ourselves. But the result of that is really, really rough because we chopped ourselves off from too much of our values, and a tree without its roots dies. Like, the music we listen to is so alien compared to classical and Bach and Mozart and the actual, like, foundations of Western society musically, which are absolutely way better than rock, country, and fucking rap and pop, definitely. Way better.
Look,
Art
yeah.
of the Renaissance period, everything. I mean, it shows how
you're
sick.
taking the
it shows how
greatest
sick-
musicians of hundreds of years of evolution
Well,
and
that's fair.
comparing them to the past 50 years of musicians.
Okay, I'm gonna address
Any
that
classical
twice.
composer are all way better than every single dude.
I
who's
mean, like,
existed.
obviously
Yeah.
that's
You're
not
telling
quite
me-
right, but here's how it works. First of all, even if you do that, it's not a good okay. So first of all, classical music is better in ways, but besides that, we can say, like, yeah, if you condense 300 or so years of music and compare that to 50 or so years of music, which are like 70 or whatever, then you're gonna end up with more standout composers in the 300-year period. But even if that were true, it would really lead you to wonder why people don't listen to those standout composers, really. Why, you know what I mean? Because, like, that's not the balance people have. People don't listen to rock and classical, they listen to rock or classical. And mostly just rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it really shows how sick a society is if we listen to mumble rap and our art is consistent of a banana on a trash can and shit like that. Versus you go back in time,
I mean,
it
that's
was
not...
Mozart, amazing Catholic cathedrals, and the Mona Lisa.
We're comparing a dead medium to a very alive medium. When
Right.
the Mona Lisa was painted, it was the most graceful thing in history. What's the most graceful thing that we've done in the past 50 years? We put a fucking man on the moon to start off with.
That's not art, though.
Yeah, we're talking about art.
You take a picture, and then that's art.
No. That's not
No,
art.
that's not art.
It's because it's like, it doesn't really look cool to have a man on the moon. It's just a really, really great accomplishment. It's a scientific accomplishment. It's like,
Yeah.
and this is actually kind of important because
We used to have art. It was called Art Deco. In the 30s, we had really awesome jazz. We had American classical composers from about 1890 to the 30s. We had Art Deco style. We had Sinatra. We had badass New York shit. And that just all stopped. And I don't know why. And
Well,
now
I
we
mean-
have fucking Juice WRLD telling me that dork.
I
It's just
get
the
that.
lamest music ever. And Miley Cyrus. All these turkeys are
Yeah, I
supposed
know.
to be like...
Well,
I get that he's not. I get that you're not vibing with this, but what he's talking about is actually a very real thing. That's kind of right. You don't have to agree with me just because I say that. But I'm not sure if we really want to get into it, like get into the whole like argument of it. But you know, that's kind of how that is how it is. And like, if I were to give a very short summary of my opinions of music in of the popular music canon, I think there's been innovations that obviously were never present in like so
Yeah.
there's like things that appeared in rock that never appeared in classical. There's innovations, but it's a poor format. Like the 3-minute song is a poor format for producing art. So the songs that have been
you
produced
can make the
have gotten-
argument that an album is the best
No.
medium.
No.
Not quite. No,
No, you
it's
can't.
about like
Landon,
it's,
you seriously can't.
Why?
no, dude. Sorry,
Why can't you-
you're right. Like I agree with what you're saying, obviously, but
Well, I'll
it's
explain.
just that it's just that it's a cautious thing of how to explain that. But
Because if you understand anything about music theory,
Okay.
it just we gotta explain it without like coming off like
well, okay.
you know. But
Yeah. If you understand anything about music theory, it's very obvious how much more complicated every single minute and second of classical music is compared to Pink Floyd.
yeah, and that's
That's
not
also-
a non-statement. I can show you.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't want to do that because you can go on forever about this, but.
We
But
should
let me
go
just
on.
explain. Let me explain. Cause I'm just trying to give my quick summary, and then we can decide whether we want to tackle
Alright.
it or not. My quick summary is that when I say a song, I mean both. I mean like the larger element of like how we produce music, how we choose what music is good. You know what I mean? It's like this the popular music canon, the way it works with this sort of with this hierarchy of mass media consumption and stuff like that. It doesn't select for good music. The song is not a good format to select for good music.
Yeah.
It's too short and too repetitive, and it's repetitive by nature,
but he
right?
said
This
that
verse,
all.
chorus stuff, and it's repetitive by nature, and it's like, and this system, this like hierarchy, this format, and then the second to second music, there's still innovations that are happening. I mean, technically, constantly.
Yeah,
But-
the
but the-
restraints are
but-
too strong. It holds you back.
Yeah, it leads to like a gradual decrease in
Yeah.
quality over time, and it's like
You can also
You
make
can-
the argument that restraints make art better.
No,
you,
definitely.
you like that's
No,
useful
dude.
as a creative concept, but in terms of like a society putting constraints on artists, very few artists would say that makes art better.
I can't explain to you verbally how much more complicated than every single look. If you have a melodic structure in a modern American music industry produced song, even like Pink Floyd level good, if you have one melodic sentence, it's going to be repeated and called a riff. You would never do that in classical. You would have to add variations every time you want to use it, and then it's a theme. And it's not repeated twice the same until like 9 minutes later. And on top of the theme is arpeggiations and complex chord structures behind it. And the rhythm isn't carried by a drum set, it's carried by the instruments.
Who says that all of that makes it better?
That objectively makes it way better. There's objectivity to art.
It's
not all subjective.
there's objectivity to art. That's worth establishing. Okay, so like I think what I want to explain to Ted, what I was trying to explain earlier, is just like I think these are
This is the reason
this
our
is
music's
right.
gonna be better than other
But
people's.
when we say these things, like we should be conscious of the fact that some people just say these things knee jerk.
Because if
a
you
lot of
don't
people
do
aren't
that,
gonna
you
listen
wind
to
up
us.
with the most repetitive. You wind up with mumble rap. If you go with the logic of who says that's not better, everything's subjective. It slowly loses its meaning over time, and then people fall in love with the same 4/4 beat, put some lyrics over the top of it, and you make $1 million in an hour.
Okay, like you can say objectivity doesn't exist, but at the end of the day, you have to select for good artists.
Yeah.
Because there's too much art, so you have to choose what art's worth listening to. And besides that, there's so many artists, you have to choose which artists deserve to get paid a lot. So you can say there's no objectivity, but like in effect, there needs to be some kind of measure. And what's more than that is that there is objectivity. But leaving that aside, when we say there's no objectivity, what we actually say is that we're going to choose artists based on what gets listened to, based on like and that's not great. Like there's enough scientific studies that show that people are really trickable in these regards. Like people will just by a sort of knee-jerk default will almost always listen to the music they listened to when they were 13, 14, around that age. Like everyone knows this is true because everyone does. People that were born in the 70s listen to 80s music. That's just how it goes. So people are, and what's more is, it's been studied that repetition of a song, that just means playing it in public a lot,
makes you fall in love with it.
Yeah. And that's been scientifically studied. So
it's all advertising. I get it.
Yeah. So the measure of it is all advertisement. So mass market appeal is not a very good measure for the quality of a song, since it just lends itself to the highest bidder at the end of the day.
Yep. But who says that a more complicated and more free piece of music is a better piece of music objectively?
Me, Mozart, Bach, Stravinsky.
A lot of
arguments
people,
with authority.
A lot of people say that, he's actually making a decent point here, and that's that
everyone who understands music.
In common consensus. No, not everyone who understands music says that, Ted. Not everyone who understands music says that. But it's been a common consensus throughout history, and that's valuable in and of itself.
We talked about this on the last podcast forever,
let's debate on that. Let's debate on that.
On what?
Because I don't think that objectively a more complicated piece is a better piece.
It's not.
The first thing is, what do you think objectively makes music better?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
All right, this isn't where this is. We have the ethos here. Look, I'll say this: we do have the ethos. We talked about this on the last pod for too long. I'll say this: there's no reason anyone should listen to fucking mumble rap, and it's kind of somewhat illogical if an alien was looking at this planet that any album has been sold, when Mozart, Bach, and hundreds of years of classical composers are all just public domain, totally free.
That's what I was saying earlier. Even if you want to say
aliens would be like,
even if you want to say that rock has equal value to classical music, breadth of classical music makes it surprising that no one listens to classical music.
Yeah. If there was aliens looking down on Earth, they'd be like, these idiots, what the hell? They're looking at a banana listening to some dude talk about popping pills when there's like fucking Renaissance paintings and Mozart's public domain and church is free. You know, expand consciousness. If you don't believe me classical is the superior form of music, I'll get these surround sound up and we'll split a bag of mushrooms. Okay? Because it's superior.
I disagree.
How do you disagree? It is superior.
We cannot just...
It's the best form of music ever been created in human history. Huh?
We might just tackle this on a different podcast, though.
Well, I mean, we talked about last podcast.
Yeah, right. So.
Wait, how could you disagree? What do you listen to?
Everything.
Sure.
Aside from classical.
There you go, you know. You're schmuck.
Well, everything, technically including classical, but like bits and snippets of fucking
Tell me a
classical.
song you listen to, though. That's good.
I mean, Cigarette Daydreams by Casey Elephant.
Yeah, that's a great song. It's a folk song.
Yeah.
It's...
You know,
it's
it
actually
has innovations that didn't exist at the time of classical. And
yeah.
That's good.
There also
but
aren't
it also
lyrics.
Isn't...
In classical. That's not music, though. Lyrics isn't music.
But also,
it's easily
it's
digestible.
that the song. Here, let me explain really quickly why having like the structure that Ted explained of how the music should be scored minute to minute is better. It's that you take these musical ideas, these innovations that are new. Well, what you want to do with those
is
innovations
apply them
is
to the best format.
You want to keep developing them, and you want to express each one thoroughly. You want, that's two things. You want to express each one thoroughly. So that means a formatted way of expressing it. This 3 minute where half the song is repeated, and yes, half the song is repeated. It goes verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's pretty repetitive. Is too constricting to thoroughly explore each idea. But what's more is that you're not developing ideas if you're not varying them. Like if you're not varying them constantly, then you're very slowly developing ideas. And the consequence of not developing ideas or very slowly developing ideas is that they tend to have a very marginal status within the public consciousness over time. If they're not developed, the long-term effect of that between songs is that the ideas just fall away after their period is gone. After the 90s are over, the 90s ideas don't really
fall by the
stick.
wayside.
So what
Yeah,
happens is
that's a good argument.
gradually the songs just kind of lose ideas. They shed them until we're left with, I don't know,
mumble rap,
does it-
dude.
who argues for mumble rap? I feel like some people have like gotta love mumble rap, but
That's what you get left with.
Well, nobody argues for it. It's just what ends up happening.
Right.
And that's what ends up blowing up. It's completely different than saying that that's the best form of art
Right.
just because people listen to it and
It's
you're
not the best
attacking.
form of art. That's my point, though.
Yep.
It blows up in this sort of condition,
Yep.
but it's not the best form of art.
Yeah.
So we have to acknowledge that there's problems with the way popular music is structured, since over time it leads to things that aren't the best forms of art blowing up, and that's probably not good. In fact, it's just definitely not good, because if you do that, art holds a really important place in the public consciousness. Like, see, like, you know, shitty music leads to shitty movies.
Yeah.
You know, and then what happens is if you have shitty movies that express really bland ideas about humans should act, or even regressive ideas about how humans should act, you end up with a desire for really bland people, and that's where you get this like WWE politics thing we have now, where politicians just kind of can sometimes just shout insults at each other and stuff, you know, because
Yeah, it lowers consciousness. If you're surrounded by office buildings with no art on them, if your music is terrible and it's all 4/4 beats and written by the same three guys, if there's no beautiful statues or cathedrals, if there's nothing good and true and beautiful around you, consciousness is lowered, IQs go down. That's reflected in politics,
Yeah.
and that's where you get Trumps and Obamas and Bidens and lame presidents no one likes. Versus you go back in time to like, you know.
Well, I mean, people hated every leader ever. So
Dude,
many
some of the
people,
early ones were cool, like Eisenhower and shit.
there were
people
tons of
hated
people.
Eisenhower,
I know people
dude.
hate a lot of
Yeah,
people.
but
John Adams got hated a lot in his lifetime. It's
They're
like,
clearly a cut above.
people hate things.
Clearly.
Like,
They're clearly a cut above what we have.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can still compare like
Because
look at Adams
back
and
in the day,
Jefferson.
what
Adams
did-
and Jefferson's correspondence, like Adams and Jefferson argued about like, and this isn't
Everything.
just something I'm saying. I've read their correspondence. They argued about real issues. Did Trump and Biden argue about real issues in
No.
the 2020 debate?
Yeah, that's a good point. No. And that's just what happens when consciousness is lowered, because art is lowered. So what does art do? See, why is this important? Why is this discussion about whether or not music is a good and important? Because it relates to everything. Art is the microcosm of ideas, and the unarticulated knowledge leads to articulated knowledge, and music is the most unarticulated form of knowledge there is. So if you don't have good unarticulated ideas coming through in art and music, nothing new will grow, because art and music spawn ideas.
Yes. I'm saying,
And we don't have good music or
Yeah,
good
we
art,
do.
so we're gonna have bad ideas.
you're
don't-
just not looking in the right places, man.
We have
It's spread too thin. There was one form of music in the 1700s, and it was classical. One
Jesus.
form.
That's not a form.
That's not a form.
Music,
See,
classical
people
isn't a
think
form.
classical is like the same sound. Like
Yeah.
every country song sounds the same. Every pop song. You think every classical song sounds the same? It doesn't. One is unbelievably mysterious and ethereal and alien, and one is dark and one is happy. It's just pure music.
Classical music.
It's beyond boundaries.
Here's the thing: classical music.
People
isn't a
don't get
genre.
that.
Let me explain this now. Classical music isn't a genre; it's a canon. Like popular
Yes.
music is a canon. It has genres inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Classical music is a canon.
Okay.
It has periods inside of it. It has
It
movements
was a
inside
different. It's a
Um,
different generation of the same thing. There was one canon, okay?
of it. Right.
And if you were a musician, you were in that canon, and your goal was to succeed in that canon as much as possible.
Right.
Therefore, just because popular music is the canon now, there are multiple different definitions and multiple different ways that artists can make a living and have their music heard by millions of people without conforming to that stereotypical record label sound.
All right. I'll allow that for the past 6 years or so, there's been a diversification of methods, and theoretically that can shift the canon.
It
but
has
I think actually
already.
That just strengthens my point, because what it means is that we should look at what we want to be the canons going. It's always just one canon, the canon going forward, and it's like, has it really already? Because there's always some degree of musical innovation, but like the past 8 years, popular music has been extraordinarily decadent, and I don't see new canons that are very strong.
EDM, folk,
I know
and
what
rap.
you mean. I actually know what he means by
Rap's
EDM.
good? You're saying rap's good?
Yeah,
New rap?
It's not good, Landon.
depending on what you define as new rap.
Last 8 years. That was the
Last
metric I
eight,
set up.
last
Dude, this is
8
pointless.
years, as
There's
in
no point. You just said rap's good.
Careful with that.
It's pointless. Let me explain how music works. This is also, it's unarticulated knowledge, so it's a microcosm of how ideas work, so it's really important that people understand this. You have one thing, it's a melody, and layered on top of it are other melodies, counterpoint, chord structure, arpeggiation.
you're also putting yourself in a box creatively if you're just thinking like that.
No, you're not. You are.
Well,
No,
the
stop
song
talking.
format's
Stop.
way more of a box.
Stop talking. Jesus. Absolutely not. There is no box in classical music. There is a box in rap, and there's a box in popular
Yeah,
music.
you can make-
There's none in classical.
You can make other genres of music as a rapper. Travis Scott is a
Okay,
good
that's
example
great.
of that. He's
This is
not
how music
as-
works.
You interrupted me a while ago, okay? I want to finish. Now, I know what you mean with EDM. Folk is a really complicated genre because
Yes.
folk relies on us basically going, okay, like, folk is a genre that expects forgiveness for being folk, and I
Yes.
won't give that.
Okay.
EDM is, I actually know what you mean with EDM being good sometimes. I'm interested to see where that goes, but unless we provide a better framework going forward, like unless we look at classical and see how they composed songs and apply that to EDM, I don't think EDM will take off.
Avicii did.
Not enough yet, because what it's produced so far hasn't been enough. What it's produced so far leads me to believe it will fizzle out slowly. And then rap, of course. Rap in
Rap
the last
sucks,
8
dude.
years has not been very
Rap,
good.
it was never good ever. Look, let me finish my thing. This is how music works, and it's related today is ideas, so it's very important that people understand it. You have one main melodic structure. You have a counter melody or two counter melodies layered together with that. You have chord structure, complex chord structure. You have arpeggiation. The rhythm is held in the piano player's fingers, not a drum set. So you take one idea and you expand it 5 different ways.
Yeah.
That allows you to
Explore
that never happens in rap because
more thoroughly.
hold on.
Okay.
That can't happen in rap because rap is essentially I guess you could call it arpeggiation if there's like a piano playing a riff
Like
over and
an
over.
sonata, you mean?
Oh, sonata.
Yeah.
And then a beat and then words. So there's only 3 layers and 0 of them are melody.
But you're failing to understand the emotion that those 3 different things can drive.
You are failing to understand the emotion that classical melody can drive. That's the issue. Because 0 of those are melody. There's melody in 0% of rap. You have beat, words, and an ostinata. No melody ever. In classical, you have 3 points of melody. You have the main theme and likely 2 counter melodies. Then you have ostinatas. Then you have arpeggiations.
Let me.
You're failing.
interject.
You are failing to realize
Ted.
how much more emotional that is than rap.
You need to dial it back, because what you've got to remember is that a lot of people
Like
that don't
rap, I
like
don't care.
a lot of people that don't like classical, they have a tendency to just assume people that go on about classical, like we're doing right now,
Yeah.
are just people that heard that classical is good, so they parrot that. They assume they're parrots, like,
Yeah.
and there's a ton of them on the internet. So we have to have we need our audience. We need people that don't agree with this to be able to listen and not just shut us off as parrots. And the converse of that is that we need to talk to people that don't agree with that, and we need to not just say they don't understand. We can't just say that.
Yeah, it's like saying that if I was super into modern art, oh, you just don't get it, man.
Yeah, but I'm right.
Right, yeah.
And he knows I'm right.
And, like,
You
that's
know
why
I'm
we
right,
can't
too.
say it.
Yeah,
Here's the
and
thing.
that's
But
douchey.
I am right, and it's not douchey because we all know I'm right. You just have to... really. We all know I'm right. He said you don't understand the emotion and complexity of rap. No,
I'm saying
you don't
you're failing
understand...
to understand it in the context of the argument. We both listen to the same songs, and deriving emotion is a different experience for everybody.
We don't listen to the same songs.
I
yeah,
mean,
but that's a subjectivist argument, and it's not
Yeah,
useful.
exactly. So you're just going to the subjective thing, which sucks because there's... Look, this is what I always tell people. People say music's subjective. Yes, it's more subjective than some other of the social sciences. It's more subjective than science. It's more subjective than math, but it still has objectivity to it. And objectively, classical is the best formula of music ever created, and it's not one emotion encompasses all emotions. And
Ever created
one of the
right,
issue,
by the way.
huh?
Ever created is actually right, by the way.
Yeah,
Because I want to stress how really amazing it was when classical appeared
Dude,
for the first
like,
time. It was crazy.
it's like
Before that,
unbelievable.
nothing was good. I mean that really. I've listened to it. Nothing was good
It's just
before
banging
that.
on drums.
well, I mean, you can go nuts to a flute that you make out of a bamboo stick. You can go absolutely nuts sitting around a fire sticking.
All right, this is all we talked about in the last podcast, and I'm burnt out talking about it, so we should continue that. But the reason it's important to understand is because if you have the ability in your head to understand 7 different layers of ideas going on at once in a classical song, that translates to how you see life. That translates to your ability to juggle ideas in a conversation, or in a lecture hall, or in a debate with other people. And if you listen to rap, you can't do that. Really.
I'm a bit confused by that statement.
It's like
It makes it-
Because
Or
you-
let's say, I
just
shouldn't
because
say
you
you
listen-
can't do that. I say it helps you grow in your ability to do that.
yes.
Yeah, I shouldn't say you can't do that. But for like society at large, it would make sense why the left and right are very one beat in their arguments, and then everyone listens to one beat songs, country and rap. It's like so like the correlation there is just seems very
Well,
like,
you're
pointed.
you're attacking
obvious.
you're attacking the popular stuff of now. There is innovation, man.
I know there's
There hasn't
innovation,
been,
but
no.
I've said the rate of innovation is slowing, and I
You
point
watch,
that.
dude. The reason our
the rate
music
of
sounds better than
innovation-
other people's stuff is because we're taking the modern innovation with like modern synths and cool technology. But you have to write everything in a classical format because it's the best format. It's been worked on for the longest by the smartest people.
That's right. Keep the innovations. Bring back the format. That's what I say, because
Yeah.
the popular format. Let's say the popular
format's horrible. If you try and write a song
really,
on like
reaches
just
its
Ableton,
lowest-
it will sound like stupid.
Let's say like right now maybe there's some promise of new genres being fresher, but those genres more or less exist outside of the popular canon, or they exist marginally outside of it. So we say the popular canon. If we just look at things that are in the popular canon, it's gotten really bad. And I say the popular canon, the way it's designed, gradually leads to a reduction in the quality of music.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Popular canon isn't the whole of today's music, though.
It's not the whole of today's music, but that just kind of stresses what I'm talking about, because by default, people will fix to the
We
popular
already
canon
decided.
with new genres of music. By
Yeah.
default, people will fix to those formats, and it's very important to, I believe, but it is very important that we look back and say the classical format was more productive, and under the classical format, music continued to get better until World War I. Literally Rite of Spring, 1913.
The thing is, we
You
have
know
this
what I
whole-
mean?
This is exactly what they.
That's what we talked about. But
Yeah.
this was really the only talking point that's overlapping.
Okay.
Most of this doesn't overlap that much.
Dad texted me 5 minutes ago. He'll be here in 10 minutes.
Okay.
So
Damn.
that sucks.
That's life.
We gotta wrap it up. That's life. That's an answer. I really do think that classical is layers and layers and layers that
We already
helps
talked
you
about this, move on.
learn how to juggle ideas, expands consciousness, and I think you can see how people are divided between two sides, and we listen to one layered music.
I would
Do
definitely.
you see that correlation, Lynn?
Correlation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would definitely draw when we see really simple production of art across many different mediums.
And then really simple
and then we
political.
see this really simple thought in politics, and there's just this like, I definitely see a correlation.
It's rough.
there.
We need to have a renaissance. That's what's going to save the lives.
Then start it.
That's what we're doing, son.
That's-
I wish this could have went longer.
We'll do anything. Let's.
Yeah.
Want to talk about something else before he gets here?
Yeah.
I would try to incorporate lyrics into your video or into your music.
He's right.
It has to happen.
I'm not a big lyrics guy.
Ben's not a big
But that's
lyrics.
more of a personal thing, really. I'm just not a poet. You know what I mean? I'm not a poet.
Then I'm not a singer.
No.
I get fucked too. We'll have to find a singer chick.
Yeah. Get a chick.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a chick and get her like.
He's right, because here's what
My only
poetry
thing is,
sparks thought as well, and it makes more available to the youth.
yeah, I believe in songs. I just don't think everything should be songs. I think there should also just be music. But
I agree. We'll have minutes on minutes with just music.
and here's what I think. I think like what I've been looking into lately is I've been realizing maybe that there's ways to go about lyrics that don't restrict the music so much, because a song format for lyrics can really restrict the music, where you have to because it means that there really can only be one melodic line. It means that it means that you can't put much focus on anything else, or else you can't hear the words. But and it means a couple of other things, but there's a couple of other ways to do it. I really when I looked at early jazz and Argentine tango, I see that they'll have sections with lyrics and then large extended sections of free music.
Yeah, Sinatra does
and
that
then like
too.
that to a bit, but they do it more. And then in classical also we see sometimes in often somewhat religious pieces, you'll see this thing where they'll take not that many lyrics and then they'll use them a lot more freely, layering on top of each other and stuff. Because there's not that many, you kind of just know them and don't need to hear them very clearly, so you can use them polyrhythmically and stuff. And that's another. So there are ways of doing lyrics that are less constrictive too, and I think those should be looked at a lot.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do it that way. He's right though. You definitely need good lyrics.
If you want to start a renaissance, you have to keep in mind where the populace is now.
Yeah, he's right. It makes it more available to the public eye.
Which
if you have lyrics.
does restrict your art and
And
make
then
the
you
shit that
also-
you want to make regardless. But
No, we can do our stuff with lyrics. Plus, what you want to do on top of that is have movies, make premiere cut style things for each song. That makes it even more available and more artistic to the populace kind of. You think so?
Yeah, it's probably better to appeal a little bit than stick with a very hard nose to certain principles that I think are valuable but are very strict, like the idea that lyrics
We
or
bring it
videos
gradually.
also you guys are kind of doing it with the podcast, but making short form content and then making it very, very clear and obvious. The entire point of your channel, honestly, should be the fact that short form video content is really bad for you. Really, really fucking bad for you.
It is.
There's a lot
When you
of
actually think-
psychological
when-
issues.
On
it's
top of that,
challenging.
it takes
Some of that's inherent in YouTube itself, or some of that's inherent in short form content itself, and some of that's a product of the platforms.
it's a product of the platforms entirely. You can make the argument that you can compress a very, very complex idea in 30 seconds of video. And people think that a lot of people who I've talked to think that compressing it down into that 30-second short period of time is better.
Yeah.
For more information and more time, meaning that the content is better.
I totally get that, and I hope that that's the truth, and that short form content and the problems with short form content can just be pinned on top of YouTube, just on things like YouTube and TikTok and stuff, and aren't just problems of short form content in themselves. I hope they're not.
I'm saying it is a problem with short form content because that idea is wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Because they get 90% of the shit, but they don't get the other 10% that pushes it over to the top, right?
There's
Yeah.
a certain breakthrough point that happens when you're talking about knowledge, and most short form pieces of content either tackle very simple things and break through that point of knowledge, a specific tax hack, or like a funny video or something like that. But in terms of like, try condensing down Pulp Fiction into a fucking 2-minute TikTok. It's impossible. You can't.
That's yeah, and that's
You get
true,
90%.
and
You
this
get
is-
90% of the plot.
Yeah,
You do.
I
You can.
No, I totally get what you mean. Yeah, I've
So you
been
should make-
thinking for a while that
Some
short
headlines.
form content just has some like it.
No,
it's
but I
again-
think, like we said, it's a gradual thing where you slowly grow. Because that's how we got into Rogan, was seeing the clips first, and then I started listening to the whole thing. So we can't have
we
this
use,
gradual
we
thing.
use the clips as the idea is to use this time we use the clips as advertising.
Here's the thing: what we weren't, Jordan Peterson proved that there is actually a thirst for like knowledge.
Yeah,
Who the hell thought you could sell out stadiums for a lecture hall?
yeah. He just literally
You know?
talked about the Bible in a very academic sense.
All right, I saw headlines. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
We can wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you guys need to, or what I would do if the entire point of it is to start an actual renaissance and a real movement, is make it very clear that short form content is bad for understanding the vast majority of concepts in the world,
I agree.
and make a ton of videos around that.
Alright.
Yes, sir.
Alright, we calling it then?
Yep.
Mm.
Call it.
Trying to think of another song. Caged Elephants, Cigarette Daydreams.
Oh shit.
This one's out of batteries.
Yeah, we're